Now, Qidian is a terrifying giant of online publishing, right? It's got, so this is where the history of web novel really starts to leak out. This is probably around part 4. I really want to do a whole video on this. Qidian is a terrifying giant of online publishing. It's got 2 huge companies behind it. So Qidian is already huge, but the 2 shareholders are even more monstrous in my opinion. One of those giants is Tencent, and if you haven't heard of them, which you probably should have, they're one of the huge tech companies in China. Big as Google, big as Amazon, in my opinion, even bigger. They're the leading company in China right now, and the CEO is one of the richest men in China. It's owned by one of the Ma's, and when I mean Ma's, I mean Jack Ma and Pony Ma. And those guys are billionaires. I'm pretty sure in the Western world he's called Pony Ma in a lot of the news publications, Forbes and whatnot. So if you want to search him up, Pony Ma. I always see him as Ma Huateng. He's really a man hidden behind the scenes. Ma Huateng is, you won't see a lot of headlines about him. He's really silent. He's one of those guys that he just doesn't pop up. He is a CEO, reminds me of Mark Zuckerberg, but he's even more low key than that guy. He's really one of the low key billionaires in China. In contrast to Jack Ma, the guy head of the next company, or not the next company, but one of the big giants in China. Tencent is a BAT company. So in economics, or if you hear any Asians or any people in economics refer to a BAT company, especially this is more a Chinese term. When a BAT company stands for Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, the 3 giants in the early days of Chinese online tech companies. Currently, Baidu is not as big. They're stronger than Google in China, but not much else. Alibaba and their ventures haven't gone that well, and that's the reason why Ma Huateng is one of the big guys of Chinese tech, and just in general, Tencent is huge. I don't think many people know how huge Tencent is, but it is giant, monstrous even. And Ma Huateng is a guy to focus on. As I said, he's low key, but he's a guy to focus on. And then the other company, I haven't even gotten to the other company yet, which I originally thought was Wanda Entertainment. I think that's how you pronounce it, or Wanda Entertainment. Originally confused it with, I think, Shanda Entertainment, or Shanda Entertainment. But Wanda Entertainment, I'll just use the English romanized version, I guess is what they call it, is a big film and entertainment company. I think they own amusement parks, cinemas around all of Asia. They're one of the movie distributors, kind of like MGM in the U.S. and the Western nations. MGM, Cinemark, Cinepolis is a luxury brand. Regal, and AMC, that's the large one. So yeah, but it's not that. But it is just as giant. They did what some might call a merger, some might call a joint venture or cooperation. I'm just going to call it a merger for now, with a company called Shanda Wangluo. Its old logo used to be SDNA, very plain, very basic. It was your basic internet company. Another gaming company, but not as big as but in that sense, it may not have been as big as Tencent. Tencent is a huge distributor of like social media. They have a lot of users in its user base. Some of their ventures have been QQ and WeChat, which is big in comparison to like Sina Weibo, Weibo. And then it's not a streaming company, but it does engage in stuff like that, like Bilibili and Qi. But it's not that. But yeah, Shanda Wangluo, or just the Shanda, the parent company. I think in English it would be Shanda. The parent company's logo, just Shanda, or just Shanda, just means big. It's very interesting the way the logo works. It's originally the character Rung, or person, and they just took one of those calligraphy ink brush strokes across it, a red ink brush stroke across it, one of those ink brushes, Malbi, to mean big. And visiting their site, both the gaming, the online company, the parent company, I have to say that site was gorgeous. I normally don't shill for companies or what YouTubers might call potential sponsors, and I don't play much video games, so streaming is probably not going to be on the table, although they're potential avenues. However, Shanda, their site had some amazing UI design. I'm going to go into that a little bit as well. When I visited, they really brought some of the, I felt like they really brought some of the experience, not to the online Qidian site, as well as some of the other sites as well. Qidian, I feel, is more owned by Tencent, although it could be Shanda and their Cloudary holdings. But they really brought it to the mobile market, to their site, to even the US market sites as well, which I will get into a little later. But yeah, so just a quick mention. Their designer is a guy that goes by the name Nick Kuo. That's his English name. Honestly, I think he's probably a Chinese native. I'm just going to quickly mention I found out his native language was Chinese, with English probably being a secondary or professional proficiency. And that some could guess where I got it from, but I'm not going to mention it. So I'm guessing he's probably from China. It could be Hong Kong, HK, or Taiwan. But regardless, he did a really gorgeous job. Logo design, site design, he's one of the things. And I think they really brought his expertise. If you're listening to this, people should hire that man. Hopefully I put his image on the screen. Don't know about that though. Yeah, and so with that, they have really taken over the Chinese, not just Chinese, but also Asian smartphone users and computer readers as well. They've really captured that market. And so yeah, those are the two companies behind Qidian. These two giant companies form what I like to call a consortium. It may be alliance, joint venture, whatever you like to call it, cooperation, but I like to call it consortium. That stand behind the scenes of Qidian. Yeah. I also forgot to mention Qidian, or a quick breakdown. Qidian, I'll probably have to edit it back in, means starting point. I may even have to cut this one out. So Qidian means starting point. How we get that is the first character Qi means to rise or to start from, and then Dian means point, right? And so that's what Qidian means. In the U.S. at least, and maybe even foreign countries and entities, it may go by the name Cloudary Holdings Limited. Now that's a company under Shanda or Shanda. They own Cloudary Holdings Limited. Now just a little bit more background. I won't go too much into it. So Tencent is this giant. They're like the Facebook of China plus more. WeChat and QQ. They have the users. Shanda or Shanda is they also engage in gaming as well, different type of gaming, like pure video games. Tencent was more like mobile video games. Shanda is that, as well as writers and entertainment. They might be the ones that built up Qidian as well, and their cloud, but their site doesn't reflect that, so that's why I think it's Tencent. Actually probably not. Actually, now thinking about it, but Shanda is probably, it actually could be running on Qidian. Is also known as Cloudary's Holding Limited, and they sign a lot of writers. They have the experience and the expertise, and Tencent provides the users, and that's the split. Now, they're a big company, and as I alluded to, or might have even said out loud, they're not a company that's just stuck in China. They're huge in China, but they're not just in China. They're a company, I think, with all international reach already, or they have a huge potential for the internet market. And I've seen its reach. They're starting to extend into Western countries like the U.S. and England, right? Those are the two countries they've, I think, started to emerge into. Now, personally, I've seen them. I think they have some reach in the Philippines, and some potential ones that they might have would be other Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia and Singapore, although I'm not sure on the situation entirely of those countries. And I think they might even have a little bit of influence in Egypt, because there was an English writer that I think was under contract as well. So yeah, and the reason why I talk about this is just from an economic standpoint. I think they're a huge threat to a lot of Western companies in online publishing. Whether they're, but that's more like economic and politics. But in my opinion, they're an even bigger threat than Amazon. And the reason why I say that is because Amazon has a whole online publishing ecosystem with Amazon, Kindle, and Goodreads, and just in terms of IP, intellectual property, and online publishing. And some other competitors would be Apple. Those are if you guys don't know, if you read books and EPUBs, Apple created the EPUB file system, so they're quite big in terms of online publishing and online books as well. And then Google Play Store and Google Books is starting their own, but Amazon has their own great ecosystem. I was surprised to learn that Amazon owns Goodreads, right? Although it makes sense, right? Kindle, but that was a huge revelation for me. And Barnes and Nobles is stuck on somewhere in between. And Amazon started off as a book business anyway. So yeah, so a lot of older English books is under those guys' IPs and previews, as well as like English publishing companies, right? I think you got Puffin, McGrath. Um, yeah, sorry, I apologize. That one requires more research. But yeah, so back to China. So even in China, some of their closest domestic competitors in China would be Feilu, also in English, I think it would be Falu. That's English or possibly Romanization, as some might call it, and 17K. And I thought QQ Books was a competitor, but I was surprisingly wrong. I'll get into QQ Books a little bit. Although Feilu 17K or Falu 17K and QQ are quite large in China, they don't have the same user base, the same depth, or the amount of money being or IPs being exchanged as Qidian. Qidian is just too big a giant. There's number one, and you got number 2 and 3. But the reason why I say QQ was weird was because QQ is actually owned by Tencent. And if you remember correctly, or if you remember at all, Qidian is held by 2 shareholders, Tencent and Shanda, or Shanda. And QQ is one of the companies of Tencent. So, QQ probably just got acquired or merged. That's why I say merged. And the reason why I started to focus on it, it became a big threat. And I did research, not because I was scared, but I was just so interested, was because they made a move in the U.S. Translation market, which was they acquired Gravity Tales. Now, this is an old U.S.-based translator. They're not huge. They're not as big as Qidian. They just translate novels. But they really emerged in the online publishing translation scene. And I think this started to scare off a lot of Western sites as well. Because Gravity Tales was huge, but there are also some other offerings and companies as well. And you can see some of that Western translation competition being held in Wuxia or Wuxia World. I never know how to pronounce that in English. I'm just going to pronounce it Wuxia or Wuxia. Webtoons, I know Webtoons in line is Korean, but you get the point across. I have a special, I feel a special connection to KDC, Kobatu Daisuki-chan. That's another site just known as Kobato-chan, I think on .com. Those are some of the translation sites. There's way more, by the way. But I feel like these companies just don't hold a candle. They don't have the financial resources or foundation that Qidian has. They can just throw huge piles of money because it's Tencent and Shanda. And these guys are really just startups. American startups, they're doing okay, but they're nothing on the level of, the whole giant Chinese market. Like, as I said, if you don't even know about web novels, that just goes to show the distance between the two. And so the reason why I say they're pulling away from a lot of the Western companies is because some things that they might be compared to would be Tumblr, Wattpad, AO3 archive. AO3 stands for Archive of Our Own, in fan fiction. But they just don't have that foundation that Qidian does. And the only closest competitors I could think of would be Amazon. And possibly Google, but just Amazon in general, because Jeff Bezos, billionaire. If he really wanted to, he probably could give him a good run. But at this point, I think China's got the infrastructure set up, and it's difficult to penetrate into their market, and they're just sending over their content to U.S. market. Especially, one would even say Bookwalker. Trash Taste fans would know from Bookwalker and whatnot, but I don't think even Japanese translations and light novels have the breadth and the depth that Qidian does. Amazon would give them a good run, but Amazon would be relying on the foundations of already published English novels, so it'll be difficult to license that. Whereas Chinese and Qidian, they can actively license and copyright their own novels, which you'd have to go through their company to actually get the IP. And what that means is Qidian, also including Shanda and Tencent, they have a lot of writers signed, tied to their brand or ship, as one might say. And when I say a lot of writers, I'm talking, I think there should be statistics on the screen. Really quickly, I'm going to go to the site. Cloudary. The statistics show, oh Lord, 2.5 million authors above that. I don't know if it includes American, but they have Chinese authors under their main foundation is Chinese authors, but they have started to sign small time English authors as well. And as I said before, they contracted one Egyptian author at least, and a couple Indonesian and Philippine ones. Now, the only other site that I could think of with that type of publishing contract signing would be Amazon, but I don't think they've focused that much. It could be the whole Yahoo Flickr situation. But a lot of these writers come from Royal Road, Scribble Hub, some of the smaller sites, and then after they've written a large amount, they've accumulated a large amount, they republish back on Amazon, and then they kind of see where it goes. Russian writers as well have a huge grasp on Litrpgs. People who are acquainted with web fictions and web novels may be familiar with that term. But yeah, so that's really I'm going a little too in depth. So yeah, so that really ends it for the tangent. This is probably going to go in a history of web novels part 4, or maybe just an independent video as well. But I just thought that would be some fun things to say. So now back to